Do you still remember Grange Hill? It was a British school drama that captured bullying, friendships, and raw teenage struggles like few shows ever did. But while the series became a huge success, many of its stars faced lives far darker than their school roles. One battled a devastating neurological disease, another died alone and forgotten, while others struggled with addiction, depression, prison, and tragic health battles. Let's take a look at the cast then and now in 2026. Susan Tully Callie Donington was one of the students who reflected the everyday reality at Grange Hill. Whether she was navigating friendships, classroom tensions, teenage insecurities, or the challenges of growing up, Callie represented the ordinary schoolgirl many viewers saw in themselves. Her storylines helped ground the series in realism and gave audiences a relatable perspective on life inside the school. Born on October 20th, 1967, in Highgate, London, Susan Tully was just 12 years old when she joined the cast in 1980. She remained with Grange Hill until 1984 and became one of the show's most recognizable young faces. Her next move was even bigger. In 1985, just 1 year after leaving Grange Hill, Susan joined EastEnders as Michelle Fowler and stayed on the soap until 1995. That 10-year run made her one of the most familiar faces on British television, especially through major storylines involving Michelle's teenage pregnancy and her connection to Den Watts. For many actors, that kind of fey, but Susan made a surprising decision. She walked away from acting. Instead of staying in front of the camera, she moved into directing and built a serious second career behind the scenes. Her directing credits later included major British dramas such as Line of Duty, Silent Witness, The A-Word, and Too Close. That shift was risky because she was leaving a secure acting identity behind, but it proved she was not just a former child star. She had real creative control behind the camera. As of 2026, Susan Tully is 58 years old. She remains extremely private and rarely seeks media attention, which makes her very different from many former soap stars. Today, she is best known inside the industry as a respected television director rather than a celebrity chasing nostalgia. Her story is not full of scandals, but the real twist is that she left fame behind and still managed to stay powerful in television. Michael Sheard as Mr. Maurice Bronson. The moment Mr. Bronson appeared in a classroom, students knew they were in trouble. With his cold stare, sharp tongue, and almost military approach to discipline, he became one of the most feared teachers in Grange Hill history. Yet that was exactly why viewers loved him. Michael Sheard, born on June 18, 1938, in Aberdeen, Scotland, joined the series in 1985 at age 51 and quickly turned Bronson into one of the show's most unforgettable characters. What made Sheard's story so surprising is that many fans never realized how famous he already was. He appeared as Admiral Ozzel in Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, portrayed Adolf Hitler in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and appeared in 6 Doctor Who serials between 1969 and 1988. Yet despite working in some of the biggest franchises ever created, he spent most of his career playing supporting characters rather than leading roles. Millions recognized his face, but few knew his name. Then came the battle that changed everything. In the early 2000s, Sheard was diagnosed with cancer of the antrum, a rare cancer affecting the sinus cavity behind the cheekbones. The disease caused severe facial pain, difficulty speaking, and significant weight loss. Even during 2004 and 2005, as his condition worsened, he continued appearing at Star Wars conventions, signing autographs and meeting fans who had waited decades to see him. Michael Sheard passed away on August 31, 2005, at his home on the Isle of Wight at the age of 67, just months before his 68th birthday. His death ended a career that stretched across more than 4 decades and some of the most beloved franchises in entertainment history. Michelle Herbert as Trisha Yates. As a student who is smart, outspoken, And often caught in the everyday dramas of school life, Trisha Yates became one of the central faces of the show's earliest years. Born on May 11, 1965, Michelle Herbert joined the cast in 1978 at just 13 years old. Later, she appeared throughout the formative period that turned Grange Hill into one of Britain's most influential children's dramas. However, Michelle chose to walk away from the spotlight relatively early. After leaving Grange Hill in 1982 and taking a handful of smaller acting roles, she made a dramatic decision to leave the entertainment industry altogether. She eventually settled in Dundee, Scotland, where she built a completely different life focused on work, family, and privacy rather than fame. For decades, many viewers simply lost track of where she had gone. Then came the most difficult chapter of all. In 2015, Michelle was diagnosed with breast cancer, a diagnosis that completely changed her life. Treatment involved a mastectomy followed by lengthy rounds of chemotherapy and radiotherapy. The physical toll was severe, leaving her exhausted and emotionally drained. Although doctors successfully brought the disease under control, she later spoke about the lingering effects of treatment, including chronic fatigue, a weakened immune system, and the constant fear that the cancer could return. As of 2026, Michelle Herbert is 61 years old. She has largely remained out of the public eye, focusing on her health and family life. After all, Michelle's greatest achievement may be something far more personal, surviving a battle that threatened her life and finding the strength to keep moving forward. Todd Carty, as Peter Tucker Jenkins. Tucker Jenkins was the student who always seemed to be one step away from trouble. Mischievous, outspoken, and constantly testing the patience of teachers, Tucker became the rebellious heart of Grange Hill's early years. Yet beneath the jokes, pranks, and rule-breaking was a character that many young viewers related to because he reflected the frustrations and challenges faced by ordinary teenagers. Born on August 31, 1963 in London, Todd Carty brought that energy to life when he joined the series in 1978 at the age of 14. Thanks to the role, he quickly became one of the most recognizable young stars on British television. Tucker became so popular that the BBC gave him his own spin-off, Tucker's Luck, which ran from 1983 to 1985. That alone shows how strongly audiences connected with him. But Todd did not stop there. In 1990, he joined EastEnders as Mark Fowler and played the role until 2003, giving him a second long-running television success. Later, he changed direction again by playing the corrupt and dangerous PC Gabriel Kent in The Bill from 2003 to 2005. His career looked steady from the outside, but staying relevant for nearly 5 decades has not been easy. Todd had to move from child star to soap actor, then from soap actor to stage performer, pantomime regular, and television veteran. In later years, he also faced the emotional weight of losing people he had worked with across Grange Hill, EastEnders, and the wider British television world. For an actor from an older generation, the shift from traditional television to a fast-changing entertainment industry created another kind of pressure. As of 2026, Todd Carty is 62 years old. He still works mainly in theater, touring shows, and pantomime rather than long-running television roles. Age has naturally changed the kinds of parts he can play, but his legacy remains strong. From Tucker Jenkins to Mark Fowler and Gabriel Kent, Todd Carty became one of the rare Grange Hill stars who successfully stayed in the public eye for decades. George Armstrong as Alan Humphreys. Alan Humphreys was one of the reliable, level-headed students who helped viewers discover Grange Hill. He represented the ordinary teenager at the center of the show's early years. George Armstrong stepped into the role in 1978 at just 15 years old. Born on July 5, 1963 in London, he remained with the series for 5 seasons and became one of the most familiar faces of the original cast. However, Armstrong decided to do something shocking. He gradually moved away from acting. After appearing in the television drama The Citadel in 1983, he made a surprising career change and joined the BBC as a sound technician. It was a very different life from the one many fans imagined for a former television star, but it provided stability and allowed him to remain connected to the industry without being in front of the camera. The most heartbreaking chapter came decades later. George was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, a devastating neurological disease that progressively destroys motor neurons. As the illness advanced, he gradually lost the ability to walk, move independently, and eventually perform basic daily tasks. The physical decline was accompanied by the emotional burden of knowing there was no cure. George Armstrong passed away on July 11, 2023, at the age of 60, after a prolonged battle with ALS. His death prompted an outpouring of tributes from former Grange Hill cast members and fans who had grown up watching him. For many, his story became a painful reminder that some of life's hardest battles begin long after the cameras stop rolling. Terry Sue Pratt as Benny Green. When Grange Hill first aired in 1978, the very first student many viewers saw was Benny Green. Talented, determined, and gifted on the football field, Benny quickly became one of the show's most beloved characters. Born on October 19, 1964, in London, Terry Sue Pratt was only 13 years old when he took on the role. He helped make television history through one of the series' most important early characters. His success in Grange Hill led to further opportunities, including a highly praised performance in The Firm alongside Gary Oldman in 1989. Yet while Benny's future on screen looked bright, Terry's real life began moving in a very different direction. Acting work became increasingly difficult to find, and the momentum that once seemed unstoppable gradually disappeared. As the years passed, he found himself drifting further away from the industry that had made him famous. The losses he suffered away from the spotlight proved even more devastating. Following the death of his younger brother in a road accident, Terry reportedly struggled with profound grief. His isolation, depression, and dependence on alcohol was grown and punched him deeply. By the early 2000s, he was living largely alone, disconnected from much of the entertainment world and far removed from the success he had once enjoyed as a young star. The tragedy reached its heartbreaking conclusion in May 2015. After concerns were raised, police forced entry into Terry's apartment in Walthamstow, East London, and discovered that he had been dead for more than a month. He was just 50 years old. His death was ruled to be from natural causes, but the circumstances shocked the public because of how alone he had become. For us, the image of one of Grange Hill's brightest young stars dying in isolation remains one of the saddest stories in the show's history. Lee McDonald as Zamo Maguire. For many viewers, Zamo Maguire wasn't just another student at Grange Hill. He became the face of one of the most shocking storylines ever shown on British television when his struggle with heroin addiction stunned audiences across the country. The storyline was so powerful that it became part of the anti-drug campaign Just Say No, and members of the cast were even invited to the White House to meet First Lady Nancy Reagan. Born on June 24, 1968 in London, Lee McDonald joined the series in 1982 at just 13 years old and quickly became one of its biggest stars. The success of Zamo opened doors, but Lee's life took a very different path after Grange Hill. Rather than building a long television career, he became passionate about boxing and dreamed of competing professionally. That dream collapsed overnight when a devastating car accident at age 21 left him seriously injured. The crash ended his sporting ambitions and triggered a long period of depression as he struggled to adjust to a future he had never planned for. With acting opportunities becoming increasingly scarce, Lee found himself working as a locksmith to support himself. The contrast was dramatic. One of Britain's most famous former child stars was now repairing locks and running a small business. Years later, he openly discussed the lasting psychological effects of the accident, including symptoms associated with PTSD. Even after finding stability through marriage and business ownership, Financial pressures and the challenges of running an independent company remained constant concerns. As of 2026, Lee McDonald is 57 years old. He occasionally returns to television, including a guest appearance in EastEnders in 2019, but spends most of his time focused on family life and his business. His story remains one of the most unexpected twists to come out of Grange Hill. Gwyneth Powell as Mrs. Bridget McCluskey. Whenever Grange Hill seemed ready to descend into chaos, Mrs. McCluskey was usually the one holding everything together. Strong, fair, and fiercely protective of her students, she became the adult many viewers trusted most. Born on July 5, 1946, in Manchester, England, she was 44 years old when she first stepped into the headmistress's office and would remain there for 169 episodes over 11 years. The role made her famous across Britain, but it also created an unexpected problem. Even after leaving the series, she spent years proving she could be more than one iconic character. She later appeared in Heartbeat Holby City, A Touch of Frost, and eventually found a new generation of fans through Channel 4's Comedy Man Down, alongside Greg Davies, between 2013 and 2017. Away from the cameras, Gwyneth enjoyed something rare in show business: a long and stable marriage with actor Alan Leith. Her final year was marked by a serious illness. During 2022, she underwent major surgery connected to the condition, and complications developed afterward. As her health deteriorated, much of the emotional burden fell on both Gwyneth and Alan, who remained together throughout the ordeal. On December 5, 2022, Gwyneth Powell died in a Brighton hospital at the age of 76 after suffering serious complications following surgery. The news shocked generations of former viewers who had grown up watching her guide students through their problems. John Alford as Robbie Wright. Robbie Wright brought plenty of energy and mischief to Grange Hill, becoming one of the familiar faces of the show's mid-1980s era. Charming, confident, and often finding himself in trouble, Robbie represented the kind of teenager viewers either related to or remembered from their own school days. John Alford was only 13 when he joined the cast in 1985. Born on October 11, 1971, in Reading, Berkshire, he seemed destined for a long and successful career in entertainment. For a while, that prediction looked accurate. During the 1990s, Alford reached a new level of fame playing firefighter Billy Ray in London's Burning, one of Britain's most popular television dramas. He also launched a music career, scoring several UK top 30 singles and becoming a familiar face in magazines and television interviews. By the end of the decade, he appeared to have everything. Then, everything unraveled. In 1999, Alford became the subject of a newspaper sting operation involving drugs and was later sentenced to prison, a scandal that effectively destroyed his acting career overnight. The damage did not end there. In 2019, he was again convicted after an incident involving damage to a police vehicle and resisting officers. Over the years, he has spoken about battling clinical depression, alcohol addiction, and severe mental health struggles, while facing the stigma attached to his criminal record. As of 2026, John Alford is 54 years old. His life remains one of the most tragic falls among former Grange Hill stars. While many viewers remember the talented young actor, the decades that followed were marked by legal troubles, personal crises, and a difficult fight to rebuild his life away from the spotlight. George Christopher as Ziggy Greaves. If there was one student who could bring chaos, laughter, and trouble into the same scene, it was Ziggy Greaves. With his Liverpool accent, quick wit, and rebellious streak, Ziggy became one of Grange Hill's most popular characters during the late 1980s. George Christopher Chalmers, known professionally as George Christopher, was born on February 29, 1970, and joined the series in 1986 at the age of 15. The success of Ziggy opened more television opportunities, most notably his role as Little Jimmy Corkhill in Channel 4's long-running drama Brookside. To audiences, he looked like another former child star making a smooth transition into adult acting. The reality was far more complicated. Behind the scenes, Christopher was struggling with severe bipolar disorder, a condition that went undiagnosed for years while his career and public profile continued to grow. As the illness intensified, he experienced periods of deep depression, emotional instability, and repeated psychiatric hospitalizations. He revealed that he had contemplated suicide during some of his darkest moments. He also spoke openly about the psychological impact of becoming famous at a young age, arguing that the pressures of early celebrity contributed to years of mental health struggles. As of 2026, George Christopher is 55 years old. Thanks to medication and ongoing treatment, his condition is more stable than it was during his most difficult years. Even so, he has admitted that anxiety, chronic fatigue, and the fear of another severe episode never completely disappear. Today, he lives a much quieter life, largely away from the spotlight that once brought both success and suffering. Erkan Mustafa as Roland Browning. Few Grange Hill characters earned as much sympathy as Roland Browning. Intelligent, kind-hearted, and frequently targeted by bullies because of his weight, Roland represented thousands of children who felt different or excluded at school. His storylines became some of the most emotional in the series. Erkan Mustafa was only 12 years old when he first played Roland in 1982. Born on May 14, 1970, in London, he quickly became one of the show's most recognizable young actors. What many viewers didn't realize was that some of the criticism directed at Roland's appearance spilled into Erkan's real life. As the character became famous, he found himself facing body shaming and cruel comments away from the cameras as well. Although he continued acting and later appeared in the popular comedy Chef, alongside Lenny Henry, the attention surrounding his weight followed him for years and left lasting emotional scars. Those struggles became even more difficult in adulthood. Long-term obesity contributed to serious health concerns involving his joints, mobility, and cardiovascular system. At the same time, finding suitable acting roles became increasingly challenging, creating periods of financial uncertainty. Mustafa has acknowledged seeking psychological support to deal with depression and the emotional damage caused by years of public scrutiny and rejection. As of 2026, Erkan Mustafa is 56 years old. He remains active in occasional television projects and production work, but his life has largely moved away from mainstream fame. His story is a reminder that the pain associated with childhood bullying does not always end when the cameras stop rolling. Alison Bettles as Faye Lucas. Faye Lucas brought confidence, style, and plenty of attitude to Grange Hill. She wasn't the type to fade into the background, and her storylines often reflected the friendships, rivalries, and teenage pressures that defined school life in the 1980s. Born on April 22, 1969, Alison Bettles joined the series in 1982 at age 13 and quickly became one of the show's most recognizable young stars. At the height of her popularity, many expected Alison to build a long television career. Instead, she gradually stepped away from acting during the 1990s. Apart from occasional appearances in shows such as EastEnders and The Bill, she largely disappeared from the entertainment industry. For fans who remembered her as one of Grange Hill's biggest teenage stars, her decision to walk away from fame came as a surprise. Life after television brought a completely different set of challenges. Alison moved into business and focused on raising her 3 sons, some of whom later followed their mother into acting. In recent years, she has spoken about the pressures of running a private interior design company during periods of economic uncertainty, where rising costs and shrinking consumer spending created constant financial stress. At the same time, she has dealt with age-related health issues, including joint pain, anxiety, and symptoms associated with menopause, although she has largely chosen to keep those struggles private. As of 2026, Allison Bettles is 57 years old and enjoys a quieter life far removed from the celebrity culture she experienced as a teenager. Allison chose family and business instead, making her journey one of the most unexpected departures from Grange Hill fame. Mark Burtis as Christopher Stewart. Stewart felt like the kind of student who could have been in almost every British school during the 1980s. Loyal to his friends, occasionally reckless and often caught up in whatever drama was unfolding around him, he became one of Grange Hill's most relatable characters. Mark Burtis brought that energy to the screen when he joined the cast in 1981 at just 15 years old. Born on October 25, 1967, in London, he quickly became a familiar face to millions of viewers. Unlike many former child actors who disappeared after their breakthrough role, Burtis continued working steadily. He appeared in the gangster film The Craze alongside Gary and Martin Kemp, featured in the long-running detective drama A Touch of Frost, and became widely recognized through a memorable advertising campaign for the AA. His career survived long after Grange Hill ended, but it rarely followed a predictable path. One of the biggest twists came when he expanded beyond acting and entered the world of boxing as a ring announcer while also producing independent films. Those careers brought new opportunities, but also new pressures. Organizing major live sporting events, securing investment for film projects, and dealing with productions that stalled or lost funding created repeated periods of financial uncertainty. Burtis later has admitted that the stress occasionally pushed him toward burnout, especially when projects he had spent years developing failed to move forward. As of 2026, Mark Burtis is 58 years old and remains involved in entertainment through producing, broadcasting, and occasional acting work. His career has taken him far beyond the school corridors of Grange Hill, but the determination that helped him survive decades in a highly competitive industry may be his most impressive achievement of all. Michael Cronin, as Mr. Jeff Bullet Baxter students, might have feared Mr. Bronson, but many respected Mr. Bullet Baxter. He pushed students to work harder while still showing genuine concern for their well-being. That balance made him one of the most memorable teachers in Grange Hill. Born on December 17, 1941, Michael Cronin first took on the role in 1979 at the age of 37. Sooner, he became a familiar face to viewers during the show's formative years. What many fans never realized is that acting was only one chapter of his career. Alongside television work, Cronin built a strong reputation in British theater, performing Shakespeare with major stage companies. Then came another unexpected turn. He became a successful novelist. His young adult novel, Against the Day, earned a nomination for the prestigious Carnegie Medal. The challenges arrived later in life. As he entered his 80s, declining eyesight began making reading and writing increasingly difficult, while chronic arthritis affected his mobility and independence. Those physical limitations gradually forced him to step away from both acting and literary work. As of 2026, Michael Cronin is 84 years old and lives a largely private life away from the entertainment industry. Although health issues have slowed him down considerably, his legacy extends far beyond Grange Hill. So, while Grange Hill taught millions of children valuable lessons on screen, many of its stars faced even tougher challenges in real life. From tragic deaths and serious illness to shocking career twists and inspiring comebacks, their journeys were far more unforgettable than anyone could have imagined. Which cast member's story shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more Then and Now stories. Then.